I'm Michael Harrison. Welcome to Up Close Far Out, our special series of video podcasts on the Talkers Media YouTube channel for communications professionals, pop culture aficionados, political junkies, media freaks, science enthusiasts, fans of radio, followers of technology, and the philosophically curious. I can be reached directly at talkers.com. If you find this show to be of interest and value, please subscribe to it as well as giving it a like. Our guest this time around is Robert J. O Neill, the Navy SEAL credited with firing the shots that killed Osama bin Laden back in 2011. As part of Operation Neptune Spear, one of the most highly decorated combat veterans of our time, O'Neill served at SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 4, and 8 years at the legendary SEAL Team 6. Having taken part in and leading over 400 combat missions, Rob operated in Liberia, the Balkans, the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean, Ukraine, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. During his remarkable career, Robert J. O'Neill has been decorated 53 times with honors. His awards include 2 Silver Stars for gallantry in action against the enemy, 4 Bronze Stars for valor to denote heroism against the enemy, a Joint Service Commendation Medal with Valor, a Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor, 3 Presidential Unit Commendations, and 3 Combat Action Ribbons, just to name a few. He's the author of the New York Times and London Times best-selling memoir, The Operator, Firing the Shots That Killed Osama bin Laden and My Years as a SEAL Team Warrior. Okay, here we go. Robert J. O'Neill. I think the most appropriate way for me to begin this is to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. It was an honor to be a part of some of the greatest teams I've ever seen. And again, it's one of those things we were discussing off camera, how the only time a perfect plan exists is when you're planning. My plan was never to join the Navy. It was to do something else, but that's the way it happened. And if you present yourself in life, good things can come your way.
I think it was John Lennon that said, or somebody like John Lennon who said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's exactly the way it is.
And I would imagine, just jumping ahead, when you go off on one of these missions and real life missions, in the back of your mind, you've got to be thinking, what will I have to deal with that'll go wrong? What lies ahead? What is that thought process like?
It changes. It's varying. When you first, or me personally, when I first got into combat after 9/11, pre 9/11, I was a different person, but we did some missions. But after 9/11, dealing with Al Qaeda, dealing with the Taliban, and eventually ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, all that stuff, I assumed, because of what I've seen in the media, that everything was going to be ridiculously dangerous, firefights everywhere, improvised explosive devices everywhere, and all that. But then, and so obviously just a little bit on edge, thinking every door you open is going to be a suicide bomber. Not the case. And eventually, after, I did about just over 400 missions. The problem is not with the fear. The problem is with complacency. Because if you go on 10 straight missions without a shot fired, no bad guys seen, maybe the 11th, you'll think, well, this is, it's been easy for the past few days. This will be a quick hit on a house, and then we'll go home, eat chow, and play Xbox. But that's when you run into the 9 guys who are barricaded in a house. So it differs. As long as you keep yourself grounded, master the basics, and the realization, the training and preparation my team and I did before we got there, we could handle anything. So you need to keep your mind right, but you can't get lulled into complacency where that leads to shortcuts. You want to always follow the rules that you make. The rules are written in blood. And even in the private sector, I'll tell lineman construction guys on power lines, the boss doesn't have you up there for 10 hours because it's a 10-hour day. It's because that's the quickest, most efficient way to do it. If you come up with a more efficient way, great. Make sure everyone knows the new way, and then you always follow the rules. Just don't take shortcuts. So it was a very fluid environment.
The fear factor has to be, especially when you're new at it, it's got to be very, very thick, very powerful, very intense. And I'd imagine when you talk about the your comrades, the people that you're fighting with, your friends, your unit, the people that you're in combat with, I guess it does create a brotherhood, or in some cases a brotherhood and a sisterhood. Mm-hmm. But you really are dependent on those relationships, aren't you?
Yeah, but it's nice because it shortens your field of fire. I don't need to worry about my back because one of my best friends in the world has it. I need to worry about 45% in front of me. Worry about my fields of fire, and the team's going to do the rest. And as long as we, again, master the basics, keep it simple. When the Bin Laden raid, people I've talked to since that weren't on the mission said, well, that was a really big compound. How did you guys clear something that complex? And I said, well, if the guy in front of me went left, I went right. And we just did that over and over and over. And that's how we did it. And but I mean, the camaraderie comes from all of the training, the stuff that people don't see. Even the missions, 90% of the missions we went on, there were non-combatants, or there weren't combatants. There's non-combatants on basically every target. But just going in the training, coming up with tactics, going on target with these people, you really get to know each other well, to a point where I got in a gunfight one night in Afghanistan where it was an open room, but it's interior, no rooftop, and I had my life saved by a sniper. And, after he shot the guy that was waiting to ambush me, he came over the radio sort of joking with me and said, "You're good, Rob." And I was impressed. Not that, he saved my life because he'd done that before. I was impressed at that distance at 3 a.m. in the dark. He could tell who I was by the way that I walked. And that's just the preparation we had to get there. We knew each other based on how the gear was worn, by your pace, stuff like that. So it was a really, really tight team, but that's good because I mean, we've never run into anyone toe to toe that could beat us.
Snipers are particularly, they have acute senses, and that's a very specialized area of combat. Am I correct that when you first got involved in the service, you either tried to join as a sniper or that you learned how to be a sniper? I remember something about you and being a sniper,
Yes,
being part of your story.
yeah. I tried to join the Marine Corps off the bat, and it was just a whim. Like, the easiest way out of Butte, Montana, is to join the Marine Corps. It's time to leave. And I knew they would get me on a bus, on a plane, and then I'd have, at least 3 meals a day, and I'd be at Paris Island, hopefully. And I went to join. And again, planning, as luck would have it, the Marine recruiter was not in the office, but the Navy guy was. So I went into the Navy guy's office on a joke. I had two Marines, two dudes I went to high school with 2 years older than me that both became Marines. They told me a joke that said, the Marine Corps is actually part of the Department of the Navy. It's just the men's department, which I laughed at. But that's the reason I went into the Navy guy's office, was to say, hey, where's the Marine? If anyone would know, you will, because they're part of the Department of the Navy. And he said, why do you want the Marine? I said, well, I'm a hunter and I want to be a sniper, and Marines have the best snipers in the world. And he said, well, look no further. We have snipers in the Navy. You need to become a SEAL first. And he kind of brushed over that because I didn't know what that was, didn't know how to swim. And then we'll send you to sniper school. And I remember looking at this guy thinking, I'm 19, I'm kind of naive, but here is a professional recruiter. Why is he going to lie to me? And he obviously didn't give a crap about me. He just wanted the numbers. But I signed up, went to SEAL training, which is a completely different animal. I did learn how to swim the hard way, but they did send me to sniper school the next year. So I became a sniper. I finished SEAL training in 1990, at the end of 1996, and I was a sniper in 1998.
Did you have some type of an aptitude for this high level of combat that is required to be a SEAL? I go back a generation before you, and I remember the Vietnam War, and I remember everybody was talking about the Green Berets.
Yeah,
that was there was even a song about the mighty Green Berets.
I remember. I know that song. Yeah.
So being a SEAL, I remember when I first heard that, I go, SEAL, what is that? Is that like a Green Beret, or is it a Navy Green Beret? I had a different frame of reference. Was there an aptitude, or did you just go into SEAL training and
I just went into it. And to the extent I knew 2 things about SEALs, something about working out with 2,000-pound logs, and I knew Charlie Sheen's movie Navy SEALs. That's pretty much it. And but getting there, what I realized along the way, I wanted to be a sniper and I wanted to be tough, but it's one of those things where if you think you're the toughest guy in the room, you're either wrong or you're in the wrong room. And I showed up, and what I learned quickly is, like, the loudest people, the tough guys, they're the first ones to quit. It's the dudes that when we finish training, 85% of the people who try out for SEAL training don't make it. But the ones who do are not. We have our top 1% guys that are the toughest guy in the room, but the majority of people who become SEALs are just a group of guys who get it. And get it could mean anything. Look, I might not be able to tell you that I'm going to make it to graduation day in 9 months, but I will tell you about my next goal in life, which is getting to breakfast. And that's it. So just make your bed in the morning, brush your teeth. You just started with a couple wins, make it to breakfast, make it to lunch, make it to dinner. And because you took the time in the morning to make your bed the right way, regardless of how bad today was, tomorrow's a clean slate and a fresh start. So you take it just minute goals on top of the next. You can't think about the 50-meter underwater swim I'm doing on Wednesday. It's going to be about the 1,000 push-ups I need to do today on Monday morning.
So the physicality of it, yeah. The
physical. Oh, there's definitely a physical aspect, but there's so much physicality that eventually you need to learn how to process it mentally. And I learned that if your mind quits, you're done. Your body's going to quit. No one's ever had their mind quit on them and then their body pulled them through. However, if your body quits, your mind can pull it through. And it was a hard lesson to learn, but through your mind, you can push your body to do pretty much anything and it won't quit until you tell it to. Your mind is the most important thing you got. So that's the mental aspect of it. You need to keep your head in the game. But once that virus of quitting enters, you're done.
You talked about the movie, the Navy SEAL movie, and we live in a media world where there's a very fine line between reality and entertainment. Television and movies are just full of violence, wars, guys, Tom Cruise doing his own stunts, hanging from helicopters, climbing up buildings. The things that you see are just astonishing. And the brutality. I never was a Navy SEAL and I never went on missions. You're an exotic character and it's kind of fun for me just to talk to you. What is the connection? Is there a connection between what the average person sees watching Law and Order or watching Blacklist or watching Mission Impossible and all of the the Marvel comics things? How similar is that to the reality of the rigors that you go through in real combat on that high level?
What people miss in movies, TV, and especially video games is you can't get shot and then just respawn or have a sequel to a movie. And it doesn't do a good job at showing how violent and loud, how fast and permanent combat can be, to the point where in a movie, it's like, oh, I just shot a bad guy in next room. But when you think about it, it's like, I just pulled the trigger on this dude I've never met. And right now, everything he's ever worried about in his life doesn't matter because he's dead. Every piece of paper he signed, every bill he's worried about, the mortgage, his family, no longer matters because I just killed him. And that's something you got to live with. And also, I mean, I've been in fights before where we've had the Air Force drop bombs on bad guys. And I've seen people not just get bombed, but completely vanish like they never existed. Everything they knew about life is gone because of a 2,000-pound JDAM that hit them. So the realism with that, the fact that, you can be with your best friend, he could be gone the next second. People really, they've become way too numb to how permanent's the best word for it. And there's, especially I've got a presence on social media, and with social media comes critics, and everyone that critiques is like, you can tell me about my tactics because you've been to a shooting range, but you've never been shot at. You don't understand what it's like. And I mean, I've seen people at the highest levels get into combat. We mentioned fear, completely freeze. And you don't know how you're going to respond to it until you're actually in it. And it's, I think I'm lucky just because I wasn't too smart and I realized I need to win the fight in order to get out. But the world's it's a large planet, but it's a small world. And we're like I could be watching cable news back in 2004 about Iraq, and then 15 hours later, I'm in Iraq. And you can get anywhere. And then comes with it, like the most people in combat zones are not combatants. They're just trying to do what we do. That's raise their kids and have a good life. So it's fragile, it's complex, it's fluid, like I said. And it's not just, here, we're the good guys, there's the bad guys now, let's shoot it out until somebody wins. So not really, I mean, the most realistic movies I think would be like Saving Private Ryan, where, people have their guts spilled out and they're screaming for their mom. Not a lot of people want to be in that. I've never seen that personally, but I'm just saying, as far as that shows you how severe and fast and loud combat actually can be.
And then the whole good guy, bad guy thing is very interesting. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, there was always, World War II was before my time. I was a post-war baby boomer. So, there was a lot of Nazi stuff in the movies and a lot of talk about World War II. And it seemed to me to be ancient history. And it was only a couple of years before I was
Right.
born. It's funny how time changes. But
It does.
there were a lot of morality questions like, did Harry Truman make the right decision
Oh yeah.
dropping H bombs on civilians? Those kinds of things. Do you have any kind of debate in your own head about the morality of all of it, as you
Oh yeah.
mentioned before, good guys, bad guys?
Yeah.
And
I mean, just saying how everything changes. When I was 27 or whatever, when we invaded Iraq, I was my head, the way I was trained was America apple pie, and I'll invade anyone if we need to. But now looking back on it, I mean, if you can put yourself, and this would be good for humanity, to put yourself in someone else's shoes. With good guys, bad guys, by the way, everyone that we call the enemy knows that they're the good guys too, and they have followers, and everyone's fighting for a certain reason. So, like, just the invasion in Iraq. Now, as you look back on it, there's one guy I think about every single day, and I can't help it. I killed him I actually killed, I think, his brother when I entered the building, and then I went into another room, which was his bedroom, killed him too, in front of his wife. And because he went for a gun, and I said, don't do it. He still went for it. I killed him. And I think about this dude. It's like, okay, now why did that guy go for a gun? Well, because I was in his room. No, why did I shoot him? Well, because he went for a gun. Why did he go for a gun? Because I was in his room. Why was I in his room at 2 a.m? Well, because George Bush decided he was pissed at Saddam Hussein, tried to kill his dad. So we invaded Iraq. And that's how it gets to it. So you think about that stuff. Like, there's guys that I've shot before. It's like, man, if we didn't meet on a battlefield, would we have maybe gotten along? Like, weird thoughts like that. So humanity, the people who haven't been in combat can't quite relate to. And if we just took a second to try to see someone else's point of view, I mean, especially with the leaders, because it's never the leaders fighting. It's always the younger men that are going and killing each other. Look at like Ukraine right now. I guarantee Putin and Zelensky are fine no matter what happens. So just, it's just, if we can make smart decisions based on reality and not someone making a whole bunch of money on a government contract because they built more bombs so we could drop it on more people. It's very complex. There's like stuff that people don't realize. There's a huge difference between Gaza, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Huge differences and everything. People don't realize. They think, oh, the Middle East, same thing. No, it's not.
Yeah. And you having been there and studied this and learned this, it's really evident to you just how people get it wrong. And you find yourself probably in a situation where you're either going to go down the rabbit hole with everybody on every subject and enlighten them, or just let it go. I'm not.
You know what? There's a time and place for everything. And sometimes letting it go, just let it go. Even, especially like on social media, just let them shout at the meta stratosphere. I don't care.
Yeah. The your life, it's kind of interesting. You've been in the media, you've been on Fox, you're on Newsmax, you've written a couple of books. Where's your head at right now in terms of your life and career? I don't want to be presumptuous about anything I've heard about you, read about you, or seen you. So you may find my line of questioning is more in areas that maybe you haven't talked about some of these things.
Sure.
So where's your head at in terms of your life? As I said before, you're an interesting person. That's for sure.
Well, I want to make sure my kids have the best lives that they can have. And so that means, paying for college, paying for dorms, and, private school, if you need it, just so that, I can ease their minds. They're the most important things in my life. And then mental health, with the PTSD that comes with combat, especially the further I got away from combat, the more I started to think the way I just explained. And a lot of people deal with that. I ask veterans not to question what they did, because when it comes down to it, when you're going through a door in a house that Al Qaeda owns, it doesn't matter what George Bush or Barack Obama's policy is. It matters, how do I protect the guy next to me? It's that simple. So the veterans that fought, they did their part. They did a phenomenal job regardless of politics, and they hopefully came home. And then it's just dealing with what you did. So I'm big into the mental health stuff. I think too many opiates are being pushed. The VA is huge into getting veterans with a medicine cabinet full of pills they don't need. Obviously, the alcohol is a big problem with a lot of people, myself included. And those are sometimes just the two alternatives to deal with some of the stress. I've dealt now with psychedelics. I've gone to Mexico. I've done something called Ibogaine, which is a complete healer, 5-MeO-DMT, psilocybin, MDMA, stuff like that. But now I'm getting big in local, because it's not legal here in the country, the psychedelics. But now what I'm getting into is cannabis. So I've gotten my license in New York, and we're in New York stores. We're going to be in Florida, hopefully soon, New Jersey. We're slowly moving because what a lot of veterans that I know that I've served with, they've stopped drinking and they started doing cannabis to help with anxiety and sleeping. And they've gotten off of like prescription Ambien because of cannabis. So I got, operatorcanna.com. We're pushing 3 different strains of cannabis because it's a natural healer that and you don't need to be a combat vet to have anxiety or any post-traumatic stress. And cannabis to me is the most natural and clean way to calm yourself down. So that's my big push is mental wellness, be it psychedelics or plant-based medicine or cannabis.
Yeah, well, post stress, all these different alphabet soup things that people have them for everything now. I have post-traumatic stress from dealing with my mother-in-law, or
hey, that can happen.
So a lot of the lines get blurry. But when you had your fateful encounter with Osama bin Laden, that was a mission under the administration of Barack Obama. And then you talk about George W. Bush and his father. And then you talk about the left and the right and the Republicans and the Democrats. And now we're in an era where communism and capitalism they seem quaint. We're sort of like, malarkey versus oligarchy. I mean, it's, we're in this whole
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we're in a new era. Even the Bill of Rights seems too quaint to be able to deal with the new layer of technology and privacy and spying and all the things that we're dealing with as we enter this brave new world. What's your position? And this is one of those things where I sound ignorant because so many people watching this know you so well. What is your position? Sometimes it's good to be ignorant because you ask questions other people are too cool to ask.
Right.
And most people don't know either of us. That's the irony. The world is big, at least from that perspective. So all that being said, how do you deal with today's political wars being a media guy?
What I try to do that's odd for so I'm on TV quite a bit. I used to work at Fox News actually. What I try to do is find out the closest thing to the truth that I can have, and then I just say that, and then I also give my opinion on it. And then if someone's talking to me, I don't interrupt them. I try to hear them out. And here's a weird one: if I'm wrong and they prove it, I'll admit that I was wrong instead of doubling down on everything, because I don't think it's a Democrat and Republican issue. I think it should be a line by line. Like socially, for me personally, very liberal. I'm conservative fiscally. It's like the whole whatever you want to do as an adult, do it. Just don't negatively affect someone else. That's it. As far as taxes, we're seeing right now with the Department of Government Efficiency, the blatant fraud, waste, and abuse with our taxpayer money. That should concern people. And I mean, I'm seeing on both sides, like the far right's one way, the far left won't believe anything. It's all, this is nonsense, and we didn't elect a king. It's like, all right, you're a little crazy and you're a little crazy. The good news is somewhere in the middle is most of us. So what I do is, like, I try my best. Don't check social media right away when you wake up. Definitely get some sunshine, even if it's cold out, and work out. Do something creative and productive for your family or your kids, then check everything else, then save the world after that. But I mean, you can yell, like you said, in the echo chamber all day long online, but just wherever you are. And I mean, obviously maybe not Portland, Oregon, or San Francisco, but go outside and realize that most people are just good. Most people, they're not at each other's throats. They're not trying to convince their kids of something else. Most people are good. And it's refreshing just to, most of the internet's fake, and it's important to realize that.
Do you think social media is one of the major causes of the anxiety in our world today? I mean, that's what I'm gathering from what you're saying.
In my mind. Yep. I think that women have, girls have a really difficult time as far as like Instagram or Facebook, stuff like that, because they're constantly being compared to someone who's not real. Like even beautiful people they're using filters to make themselves look skinnier, look better. And like, I mean, even to the point where someone like even Pam Anderson, she shows up with no makeup now, and she's applauded, which is great, because, oh, well, look at that. The most beautiful woman who used to be the most beautiful woman in the world is normal, but they're not getting that. So they're judging themselves, and they're in a different fake world where you can be catty and yell at each other. For boys, it's video games. It's violent video games. It's, I'm actually reading a book today where a young kid said, I wish I would have spent more time with my grandfather before he died. I just played video games every time he was over. And they're just in a fake world of nonsense violence, yelling at each other. It's just, I think it's really bad for loneliness, anxiety, and then eventually, self-harm. I think a lot of the social media and video games are really bad.
So all of this is coming under the heading in terms of your life of I know that you have been a motivational speaker and that you try to uplift people and you're concerned about mental health. You're on the cutting edge of cannabis and certain psychedelics that finally I refer to my own past. We're finally enough in the future from the Timothy Leary days. And I knew Timothy Leary very, very well in my younger days. He worked with me in some publications that I worked at, and I got to know him. But there's like a new era of acceptance that psychotropic, psychedelic drugs are very useful in terms of learning about the human consciousness, etc. This is your direction then, basically, is trying to make people feel more comfortable in this crazy new world and deal with the anxieties. Am I correct in gathering that?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, around Timothy Leary, back in the day, back in like the Vietnam era, the U.S. government was actually against testing LSD. Psilocybin, just because of the anti-war movement, and big government wants the wars to happen for money. And so it turns out that we got the Rolling Stones and the White Album out of the Beatles. We got some really good creative music because of stuff like that. And the psychedelics, they've been demonized.
Yeah.
Because like the thing that I hear even with my friends on Capitol Hill, like Ibogaine, they'll say, well, it's a club drug and we don't want that here. It's like, it's not a club drug. Ibogaine's the most terrifying thing I've ever done. And it lasts about 50 hours, and you don't want to be anywhere except being supervised by medical personnel. When you're done with that whole process, and then you do something uplifting like 5-MeO DMT, your entire world changed. And you have a better, like when I finished my last trip to Mexico, the very last part is 5-MeO DMT, looking at the Pacific Ocean. And I remember the feeling, obviously tears going down my face, feeling healed. They got me a plate of fresh fruit. It was the best smelling meal I've ever had. And all I want to do is find butterflies and pet them. Like it's nothing violent about that. It's just what they do is it has your mind open up to, and when they say like you only use a certain percent of your mind, like 30%, that's true. But what I've heard, I'm not a doctor, is that you'll use 30% of your brain playing chess, a different 30% when you're typing an email, and another different when you're playing basketball or whatever. But with some of these psychedelics, they all open up and then they just discuss with each other. So you're just in your own mind, and it's uncovering, especially with Ibogaine, it's showing you stuff you may have suppressed. It lets you deal with it, and then it lets you get rid of it. And again, too, everything with like club drugs, yeah, there's ecstasy, you take it in the club and go. But with medical grade MDMA, psilocybin, 5-MeO, and Ibogaine, you get it administered to you, and it's a healing process. And it's, no one's ever smoked cannabis and then gone to the bar and tried to fight everybody. That's alcohol. And that's, and unfortunately, the military is a big drinking culture. And again, some people can handle it, some people can't. And there's nothing, if in moderation, with anything in moderation, it's fine. And I'm not demonizing alcohol. I'm saying some guys with combat stress and thoughts of war maybe don't need to chug a bottle of whiskey. Maybe there's an alternative to help them sleep. And that's kind of my thing. And also just getting, toe to toe, belly to belly with other veterans, letting them know what they did was great, letting them know they're a great person. They defended their friends, and every day is a blessing.
Now, I could talk to you for hours. I'm going to pull myself out of this because it's so interesting. And just this discussion about the drugs alone, we could go on and on. So let me get back to the track that I had intended to be on. And that is, I had asked when the opportunity to speak with you on this program came up, I said, well, what's his mission? What does he want? Is he selling something? Is there a book? What's on his mind? And the fellow said to me, he just wants his story out there. He wants to be able to tell his story. And then we talk a little bit about the negativity that we all get from social media and online. You always get critics. I'm sure because of the high profile nature of what brought you to public's attention, and being in a major operation that is of historic proportion, and the title of being the man who shot bin Laden and all that stuff. What aspect of your story, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that isn't part of your mission, but what aspect of your life and your story, your history, your critics, your supporters, all this stuff that makes you a very unique and interesting human being, what aspect do you feel has not been told properly, or that still troubles you?
Well, I mean, it's been told properly and it's out there. The book that I wrote, my New York Times and London Times bestseller called The Operator, I wrote a life story based, I call it The Operator. I'm not arrogant enough to call myself The Operator. It's the life of the operator. And the operator at the time I wrote the book was anyone in the military, a special operator, a ranger, a soldier, a Marine, because it tells a story of a guy from Butte, Montana, how I got through whatever, and I ended up at the pinnacle of my chosen profession. And the point is, being a scared kid from Montana, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you're from. You can do anything with the right mindset. And I learned that just with, going off on my own, but learning to ask questions and seeing the way other people respond, and then becoming friends with other people and continuing to ask questions. Like in a room where someone's instructing you and you don't understand, and someone says, well, who doesn't understand? No one raises their hand because they don't want to be that guy. I always raise my hand. And if they say, well, what don't you understand? I'll be like, I don't understand all of it. Please explain again. And there's nothing wrong with that. So the point of The Operator is that you can do anything. But then I got further into it. Now my podcast is called The Operator. That's obviously The Operator with Rob O'Neill. And the point there is I've expanded my thoughts that you don't need to be a soldier to be an operator. If you're doing something in life that positively affects someone else, you're an operator. And think of the unsung heroes, and not just the soldiers and Marines who drove around waiting to get blown up. I'm talking about like the trash guys in Manhattan that are out there at 2 a.m. They wake up at 1 a.m., say goodbye to their kids, and they go clean the city up to no thanks. And they're busting their asses. They're operating. The single mom who never gets credit is operating. She's raising her kids. That's wonderful. So with the Operator podcast, I'm going to give you my opinion as an operator, and I want to hear your feedback. And again, if you make a valid point, I'll research it. If I'm wrong, I will tell you and I'll correct myself. So that's where the operator thing comes from. That's where the book comes from. And that's kind of my outlook on everybody, because you're all operating. If you do anything positive, yeah, I mean, it's just the same thing in life. The littlest decision you make right now in 30 years is going to have a huge impact. Like prime example, I've told my daughters that if that Marine recruiter wasn't at lunch, wasn't at Arby's at 11:30 on a Wednesday, you wouldn't be alive, because I would have joined the Marine Corps and gone to North Carolina instead of joining the Navy and going to Virginia. So it's like, just keep operating and see what happens.
And there you have it, a conversation with Robert J. O'Neill. You can learn about a variety of Robert J. O'Neill's activities by visiting his website, robertjo'neill.com. If you'd like to purchase one of his books, including his most recent, The Operator, you can do it through his website, and he'll sign it with a special message if you'd like. Just let him know what it is. Thank you for watching our program. Please subscribe to the Talkers Media channel here on YouTube and hit the like button. Up Close, Far Out with Michael Harrison. Our producer is Matthew B. Harrison. Copyright 2025, Good Phone Communications. All rights reserved.